Already YouTube and those of you watching on iTunes, how you guys doing? Hope you guys are well, and apologies for putting this weekly series up a wee bit late, but nevertheless I've got a action-packed story segment, if that's what you want to call it. But let's get straight into it. The first story of this week is, and one of the biggest things that just happened about in the last hour, is Steve Jobs taking medical leave again. He took medical leave last year in 2009, and he specifically said in the press release that he's going out of action for 6 months, and he's going to come back end of June, which he did. He left Tim Cook in charge, and he done a fantastic job. And you know, he raked in 50 million roughly, which is a neat figure for 6 months worth of work. And this time around as well, Tim Cook has taken over. But what's different about this time is Steve Jobs hasn't said how long he's going out of action for, which is kind of making people think, is he really going to come back, or is it going to be one of those long ass leaves? But nevertheless, in whatever instance, all the best to Steve. Hope he recovers soon. And I don't think it's going to have any impact on the upcoming iPad 2 launch, the iPhone 5 launch, the MacBook Pros. These things are kind of ironed out months before. Right now, I think it's probably going to be in the manufacturing stages. And never, last time Steve left, Tim Cook did a good job, and we got all the same kind of products. There was no impact on it. He's got a fantastic team behind him. Jonathan Ive, Phil Schiller, Tim Cook, and even Jonathan Ive, I think, is one of the biggest figures in my opinion, because there's a lot of stories in the past few weeks where people or staff refer to Jobs and Jonathan Ive as Jives, I think it was, because they have such a good partnership, Steve Jobs and Jonathan Ives. So I don't think it solely relies on Steve, and he is the kind of leader. But at the end of the day, he's got a fantastic team behind him, and I don't think there should be an issue. But that said, stock has dropped 6% in Germany after the news broke out that Steve is leaving for medical reasons. I think it will become more clearer tomorrow at the Apple conference call. Investors will want to know what has happened, so know that they will ask. Media reps will ask, what is wrong specifically with Steve Jobs, when he is expected back, and whether or not Apple choose to respond to them, we'll find out tomorrow at the conference call. The second story is in relation to the iPod Touch 5th generation, which is kind of always released around September time. Nintendo is going to be releasing their 3DS or 3D version of their handheld console, and rumours kind of appearing today that iPod Touch will have a 3D display as well. This rumour is saying that Apple has kind of chosen their LCD supplier of this 3D. And what's interesting about this 3D display is you don't have to wear any glasses, hence why you would kind of think Apple go for this way, and what more are they going to do with the iPod Touch? Do you know what I mean? So I think 3D is the way forward, and you don't want to be wearing stupid glasses when using your iPod Touch. So I think this rumour is kind of credible, and Nintendo have been for a few months now try and see how they can compete with the iPod Touch. No doubt the iPod Touches have kind of taken away from the Sony PSP, Nintendo DS, because apps are much cheaper, they're better. You can do so much more with an iPod Touch over a Nintendo DS. And now that Nintendo 3DS is coming out next month, I believe, it kind of makes sense that the iPod Touch, how many more physical changes are they going to make to it? So they really need to have more features, and this year at CES it was kind of all about 3D, and I'm pretty sure, although this is a rumour, I can see Apple going down the whole route of 3D, and that would be pretty awesome if we get 3D in the iPod Touch. That would be very, very slick. But what do you guys think? Leave a comment below. The third story, believe it or not, is about the iPad 2nd generation, and there's a lot of stories in relation to this. So the first one is release dates. Best Buy had put up 3 new codes, iPad SKUs, which is stock codes for new iPads. They got taken down, surprise, surprise, why? But these retailers kind of do this to, come out in the press, because as soon as they put up, every media outlet started tweeting this out, posting this, hence they get more coverage and so on. Another interesting report comes out from macnotes.de, who have said the iPad 2nd generation will come out in the 1st or 2nd Saturday of April, which kind of makes sense, because that will then mean it's a full year until the 2nd generation comes out. As you know, with all Apple products, it has a full 1 yearly life cycle. But here's the interesting thing, and I hope this is not true. What this website is reporting, that the iPad 2nd generation is going to be exclusive to the United States for 3 months. That is insane. and a lot of people were annoyed, including myself, even although I did get mine from the United States eventually. A lot, it's claiming that I don't see why a specific country should get exclusivity for 3 months. That's way too long. Partially, the success of Apple is that they have worldwide launches at the same time. That is what is going for them. So I think if they do that, it's going to be annoying, and I'm probably going to end up getting it from the US because I don't want to kind of be left behind, sort of thing. But I hope that doesn't happen. And further to this, Engadget, who have been bang on correct in the past, they've got a ton of Apple TV updates, iPad 2 rumours, Apple TV updates, Apple TV rumours, and iPhone 5 rumours as well. So talking about Engadget's view of the iPad 2, it's going to have an SD card, it's going to have a front and rear facing camera, and it's going to have a different CPU, the A5, and it's going to have a super high resolution screen. Now there's a lot of debate about what the iPad 2 can have in terms of Retina display, because like it or not, when you put an iPhone 4 or an iPod Touch 4th generation beside an iPad, it does look weird reading text from an iPad. It's weird as in it's kind of bad looking at the iPad screen. You get kind of spoiled. If you're like me, you've got an iPhone 4 and then you're constantly switching between an iPad and an iPhone 4, you do see remarkable differences, and you do have to zoom in a bit more to the iPad. And needless to say, they're not going to keep the same display in after a year. It doesn't make any sense. And the thing is, they can't put a Retina display, and there's arguments over this, debates over this. You can put a Retina display on an iPad. It's just not physically possible to the eye, apparently. So what people have suggested is, in a lot of kind of hints in iBooks, coding has found that they are going to double the resolution. And this is what they've done with the iPhone 4 when it was launched. So they doubled the resolution, and what it does, it makes it easier for app developers to support the new device. It's much more of an easy integration, and that's why when the iPhone 4 was launched a few days after, there were updates in the App Store saying supporting high resolution display. But at the same time, you could still use the app. You could still use the app, but it just meant that you didn't need to completely re-download the whole thing just to use the app. Which kind of makes sense for the iPad. I don't know. To me, the iPad 2 doesn't need a new display. There's no rocket science about it. You do need a new screen, and a lot of people, when they put it under the sun, it stops operating, errors, it goes off. The screen is smudgy as hell, and it's not as clear as the iPhone 4 is. So whatever they do with the screen, it needs to be better, needs to be improved. But what do you guys think? Leave it in the comments. Oh, and one more thing, the iPad is apparently going to have its home button removed, which I'm totally for. That is great, because then that can mean, it's going to have more screen real estate, if that makes sense. So if they could remove that home button, because it does take quite a chunk, so if they can remove that and make the screen bigger, that would be kind of cool. And what's going to kind of replace that is the multi-touch gestures, which is kind of released, or is going to be in the next iOS 4.3. And as you can see from the screen, the new multi-touch gestures are amazing. This is what the iPad should have had in the first place. In terms of, the iPad is such a device, you're holding it with two hands, and when you want to multitask or do something, you have to kind of move over quite a bit to press that home button to do multitasking or go back to the main screen. Whereas the iPhone, because you can use it with one hand, it's what I do anyway, use it with one hand and you can use your thumb to go back to the home screen. So ideally, I'd still want the home button on the iPhone, but I want them to take it off the iPad, because it's kind of a heavy device. You've got it in two hands anyway, and using multi-touch anywhere on the screen is absolutely genius. Apple going towards that whole magic trackpad and the gesture scene, I'd be quite up for it any day of the week. So iOS 4.3 looks amazing. On a side note, it's going to have personal Wi-Fi hotspot. Now, it can be argued, I personally think that carriers are going to charge for this. I cannot see why O2 or Orange are not going to jump on the opportunity and say, hey, pay us a fee a month. Speaking of iOS 4.3, photo booth is finally coming to the iPhone. I do not know why it's been kind of neglected. They had photo booth feature in the iPod Nano 4th generation, the long one, the previous one to the current one, and I kind of always get mixed up with the generations. But that had photo booth, and it had a camera on the back, the iPod Nano, and it was great because then you could use photo booth effects, make it a bit more funky and cool and so on. And photo booth has been on the Mac for quite a while now, even in Leopard, and maybe even before that, and it's fantastic. It's great. You can do so many effects, have endless fun. And not to have this on an iOS device is insane, because iOS devices are kind of outselling Macs, or more popular. So why not have this? I mean, it's coming. It's going to be in the next iOS 4.3, but it just makes you wonder why, if it can be on an iPod Nano, why can you not just add this feature to an iPhone? Surely it's not, coding, as it's not rocket science when it comes to coding. It's not really intense. It just, I don't know, but it is coming next iOS 4.3. There's been coding has found in the beta which Apple released of iOS 4.3 for developers, and I'm very excited about this feature. Another feature of iOS 4.3 has been found in the beta which Apple released, and it's a feature called Find My Friends. Now, those of you who have an iOS device, you know about the feature called Find My iPhone, where you can track where your iPhone is. This feature looks very similar in that you can see where your friends are, if they're nearby or wherever they are. You can assign contacts and see, okay, if your friends are in this neighbourhood, then you can tell them to pick up something to eat. But that aside, don't know how much of a privacy issue this is going to be, where you might forget to put off your GPS and you don't want people to know where you are. Steve Jobs did say mobile meet is going to get a lot better in 2011, and does that mean he is going to include stalking features in iOS 4.3? I guess we'll find it pretty soon. The next story is in relation to the iPhone 5, which is going to be released or refreshed in June, July's time, as it always has. Engadget claims that the next iPhone 5 is going to be completely redesigned, which, I mean, I don't see a problem with the current iPhone 4, to be honest. I think it was the media with the whole antenna gate. They're probably going to make the antenna gate whole thing behind them, as in make it more magical, let people know that they've kind of, revolutionised the antenna and say how much better they've made it. And possibly a lot of people were saying that Apple's claims about the whole Gorilla Glass on the back of the iPhone was a total BS, as in people were saying, okay, smash, trying to see if Apple were right or wrong in this instance. People were smashing their iPhones. I guess we'll find out in a few months' time. More rumours will emerge soon. But another interesting thing about the upcoming iPhone is it's going to have a multi-core processor. Now the current iPhone 4 runs in a single core, so having it running on multiple cores is going to be quite beastly when it comes to video and starting up speed. And the same set of processor, which is going to be codenamed A9. The current one's the A4, so this is going to be the A9. It's also going to make way on Apple's Hobby, which is the Apple TV, and it's also going to have 1080 compatibility streaming, which kind of makes sense. 720 will, by the time the Apple TV 3rd generation launches, of course it's going to have 1080. It's kind of a given. But I guess we'll find out more in relation to the iPhone 5 and Apple TV in time. And last but not least, guys, Call of Duty 4 and Civilization have been released on the Mac App Store, and you're thinking, hang on, why is this news, or why is this on Apple Weekly? The reason why is I never thought for a minute that Apple would put on high graphics or really popular games on the Mac App, so it's very interesting. I thought it was purely going to be iOS related games like Angry Bird and Plain HD, and those were the kind of launch titles. And having a 6.8 gig file on the Mac App Store, I just never saw it happening, especially with that caliber of game. But it's good. It is very, very good news, and it just makes you wonder why, if they're going to shut out Steam in a few years' time or a few months' time. Because at the end of the day, I mean, when Steam came out, I don't use it. I'm going to put my hands up and say I don't use it, even although it is available. I made a few wrong choices when it was launched, as in I bought games, but realised they were PC only, so I wasted about £20 on them. But having them on the Mac App Store, having it all centralised, having it everything is there sort of thing, I think is very, very good. And in the next few days, weeks and months, we're going to see more popular actual games, if you know what I mean. But guys, if you have any questions or comments, I'd appreciate if you can leave it in the comments below. If you're watching this on iTunes, if you, sir, can leave a review for this podcast, you would be amazing. But guys, that's it for this week's news, and again, apologies for putting this out late, and thanks for watching. Huge thanks to the sponsor of iGlaswegian, Parcel Monkey, of course. If you can check their website out, that would be fantastic. And guys, thanks for watching. Cheers. We have a new sponsor here at iGlaswegian, looking to send a package at the lowest price possible. Simple. Visit parcelmonkey.co.uk, follow these 4 simple steps, have the package collected from your doorstep, and then sit back and relax.